a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Colette. Colette was a French novelist nominated for the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1948. Her best-known work, the novella Gigi, was the basis for the film and Lerner and Loewe stage production of the same name. She was also a mime, an actress, and a journalist. Family and background. Sidonie Gabrielle Colette was born on January 28, 1873, to war hero and tax collector Jules Joseph Colette and his wife Adèle Eugénie Sidonie, née Landouille, in the village of Saint-Sever-en-Puisaye in the département of Yonne, Burgundy. The family was initially well off, but by the time she was of school age, poor financial management had substantially reduced her father's income and she attended a public school from the ages of 6 to 17. Early years, 1893–1912. In 1893 she married Henri Gautier Villarreau, Willie, his nom de plume, a well-known author and publisher, and her first 4 novels, the 4 Claudine stories, Claudine à l'école, Claudine à Paris, Claudine en ménage, and Claudine s'en va appeared under his name. They chart the coming of age of their heroine, Claudine, from an unconventional 15-year-old in a Burgundian village to the literary salons of turn-of-the-century Paris. The story they tell is semi-autobiographical, but not entirely. Most strikingly, Claudine, unlike Colette, is motherless. Willie, 14 years older than his wife and one of the most notorious libertines in Paris, introduced Colette into avant-garde intellectual and artistic circles while engaging in sexual affairs and encouraging her own lesbian alliances. It was he who chose the titillating subject matter of the Claudine novels, the secondary myth of Sappho, the girls' school, or convent ruled by a seductive female teacher. Colette later said that she would never have become a writer if it had not been for Willie. Nevertheless, when Colette wished to have her name associated with her work as it became widely known, Willie resisted and locked her in her room until she produced enough pages to suit him. Colette and Willie separated in 1906, although it was not until 1910 that the divorce became final. She had no access to the sizable earnings of the Claudine books. The copyright belonged to Willie, and until 1912 she followed a stage career in music halls across France, sometimes playing Claudine in sketches from her own novels, earning barely enough to survive and often hungry and unwell. This period of her life is recalled in La Vagabonde, which deals with women's independence in a male society, a theme to which she would regularly return in future works. During these years she embarked on a series of relationships with other women, notably with Mathilde de Morny, Marquise de Belboeuf, with whom she sometimes shared the stage. On January 3, 1907, an on-stage kiss between Missy and Colette in a pantomime entitled Rêve d'Égypte caused a near riot, and as a result they were no longer able to live together openly, although their relationship continued for another 5 years. In 1912 she married Henri de Jouvenel, the editor of Le Matin. A daughter, Colette de Jouvenel, nicknamed Belgazou, was born in 1913. During the war she devoted herself to journalism, but marriage allowed her to devote her time to writing. Writing career, 1920–1954. In 1920 Colette published Chérie, portraying love between an older woman and a much younger man. Chérie is the lover of Léa, a wealthy courtesan. Léa is devastated when Chérie marries a girl his own age, and delighted when he returns to her, but after one final night together she sends him away again. The marriage to Jouvenel ended in divorce in 1924, partly due to Jouvenel's infidelities, and partly to Colette's own affair with her 16-year-old stepson, Bertrand de Jouvenel. In 1925 she met Maurice Gaudicat, who became her final husband, although she was already an established writer. The decades of the 1920s and 1930s were Colette's most productive and innovative period. Set mostly in Burgundy or Paris during the Belle Époque, her work treated married life and sexuality. It was frequently quasi-autobiographical. Chérie and Le Blé en Her both deal with love between an aging woman and a very young man, a situation reflecting her relationship with Bertrand de Jouvenel and even Gaudicat, who was 16 years her junior. La naissance du jour is her explicit criticism of the conventional lives of women, expressed in a meditation on age and the renunciation of love through the character of her mother, Sido. By this period Colette was frequently acclaimed as France's greatest woman writer. It has no plot, and yet tells of three lives all that should be known, wrote Janet Flanner of Sido. Once again, and at greater length than usual, she has been hailed for her genius, humanities and perfect prose by those literary journals which years ago lifted nothing at all in her direction except the finger of scorn. Last year's 1940-1954. Colette was 67 years old at the fall of France, and remained in Paris, in her apartment in the Palais Royal. Her husband Maurice Gaudequet, who was Jewish, was arrested by the Gestapo in December 1941. And although he was released after a few months through the intervention of the French wife of the German ambassador, Colette lived through the rest of the war years with the anxiety of a possible second arrest. During the occupation she produced 2 volumes of memoirs, Journal à rebours and Ma fenêtre. She was nominated for the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1948. In 1944 she published what became perhaps her most famous work, Gigi, telling the story of 16-year-old Gilbert Alvar. Born into a family of demi-mondaines, Gigi is being trained as a courtesan to captivate a wealthy lover, but breaks with tradition by marrying him instead. In 1949 it was made into a French film starring Danielle Delorme and Gaby Molly. Then in 1951 adapted for the stage with the then unknown Audrey Hepburn in the title role, picked by Colette personally. The 1958 Hollywood musical, starring Leslie Caron and Louis Jourdan, with a screenplay by Alan J. Lerner and a score by Lerner and Frédéric Loewe, won the Academy Award for Best Picture. In the post-war years, she became a famous public figure, crippled by arthritis and cared for by Gaudequet, who supervised the preparation of her œuvres complètes. She continued to write during those years, bringing out L'Étoile Vesper and Le Final Bleu, in which she reflected on the problems of a writer whose inspiration is primarily autobiographical. On her death on August 3, 1954, she was refused a religious funeral by the Catholic Church on account of her divorces, but was given a state funeral, the first French woman of letters to be granted the honor, and interred in Père Lachaise Cemetery. Legacy. Colette was elected to the Belgian Royal Academy, the Académie Goncourt, and a Chevalier and Grand Officer of the Légion d'honneur. Colette's numerous biographers have proposed widely differing interpretations of her life and work over the decades. Initially considered a limited if talented novelist, she has been increasingly recognized as an important voice in women's writing. Just before Colette's death, Catherine Anne Porter wrote in the New York Times that Colette is the greatest living French writer of fiction, and that she was while Gide and Proust still lived. Singer-songwriter Rosanne Cash paid tribute to the writer in the song The Summer I Read Colette, on her 1996 album 10-Song Demo. Truman Capote wrote a short story about her in 1970, called The White Rose. Lucette Stranded on the Island, by Julia Holter, from her 2015 album Have You in My Wilderness, is based on a minor character from Colette's short story Chance Acquaintances. In the 2018 film Colette, the novelist is played by Keira Knightley. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?